again, and time to join René and me for Chapter 12.
René and Me by George East. Read by Eugene Fraser.
An hour later, and we're at the head of the jostling queue for a huge slice of lamb, garnished with Normandy green salad and a bucket full of chips. As we steady our plates and stand by to fight off rivals for the delicious outer cuts of seared, crunchy skin infused with J-Pay's secret marinade of herbs and spices, he ceremonially unsheathes his weapon. Holding the giant carving knife up to the sun, he squints at the glittering blade and is obviously not happy with what he sees. As we salivate like dogs waiting anxiously for their dinner to be put in the bowl, he turns to his well-worn whetstone and hones his knife in the manner of a priest preparing his implements for a very special service. Finally, after much examination of the blade and consultation with fellow specialists on the team, he makes the final, crucial test. Rolling his sleeve and exposing a massive and densely hairy forearm, he draws the blade carefully from sweaty elbow to wrist. Holding it once again towards the sun, he runs a sausage-like finger and thumb delicately along the blade, then holds up a thick tuft of damp hair to the crowd, from where is heard a reverent murmur of admiration and approval. At last, satisfied, J-Pay wipes the knife casually on the seat of his trousers, confronts the nearest lamb, and carves a thick wedge from its saddle. My wife and I exchange glances, then simultaneously step aside to let someone behind us have the honor of bagging the first slice. Dusk is approaching, and the fairy lights fetchingly draped across the water bowser by the portaloo are twinkling brightly. The mobile DJ is working his way up to the birdie song, and René is dancing with my wife. Our friend Hubert Odoa is filming the day's activities and indiscretions for posterity, and frowns as he records our estate manager's attempts to teach Donella a dual version of his whirling dervish routine. René has already disgraced himself by hijacking the tractor train ride and taking the carriage loads of village children on a much more exciting route through the field of cattle maize across the road. As he is firmly but gently led off the floor by my wife, the DJ blows loudly into his microphone and announces the draw for the raffle is about to take place. Shyly mounting the platform, Solange Chevalier reaches into the feed bucket held by Madame Ghislaine and produces a ticket. René nudges me heavily in the back as my wife's name is read out to polite applause. As René was for some reason entrusted with writing the names in the back of all the tickets, I am relieved to see that there are no other prizes but the plump Chinese rabbit with which my wife is presented. Later, and I spend a pleasant 10 minutes at the bar with our mayor, who tells me he has heard from the builders' merchants at Cherbourg that a suitably large and impressive boulder for the pattern orchard has been located and will be picked up and delivered free of charge in the coming weeks. I say I'm more than pleased to have helped with the project, thank him for a wonderful day, and go to collect my wife, who has just presented the large and cuddly rabbit to J-Pay's youngest daughter. She is obviously delighted and runs straight to her father to show off her unexpected gift. As J-Pay holds the creature up by the ears and prods its stomach, Donella smiles fondly and says they're probably discussing what best to feed it on. I agree, but would rather wager that he's telling her the best way to cook it. We prepare to leave and see René behind the water bowser with a young woman. He is obviously drunk and concentrating blearily on the unaccustomed practice of taking some notes from his wallet. He gives them to the girl, then sees us watching and hurries her away into the darkness. I coax Victor across the bumpy field and into the lane. Then my heart sinks as we're flagged down by a large gendarme swathed in leather and wearing the standard menacing sunglasses under his visored helmet, even though it has long been dark. We're not 2 miles from home, and I had thought it safe to go beyond my normal driving ration of 2 bottles of beer. French policemen persecute all drivers, but seem to take a special delight in harassing the British motorists who contribute millions to the nation's economy each year. Clutching at straws, I take several deep breaths and waggle my tongue frantically around my open mouth as the figure approaches with a familiar cocky strut, leans down to my open window, and removes his helmet and sunglasses. I then realize it is the boozy Bobby who helped remove Mr. Jean from the clutches of our roadside ditch, and that he has obviously been drinking far more than me. He pumps my hand, crisply salutes my wife, and asks if we have had any more temporary guests. He also asks if our special emergency supply of calva is still in stock, and remarks pointedly on how chilly the night air is after such an agreeable day. I let out a huge sigh of relief, give him time to find, fall off, then re-straddle his mobilette. And we create another local legend by becoming the first villagers to receive a motorcycle escort home from the annual Neu Fete. August the 17th. I am standing on a stepladder and restaining a suspect beam in the bedroom when a small helicopter enters through the dormer window. The creature hovers menacingly for a moment as it gets its bearings, then joins me at the top of the ladder. I stand very, very still. After prowling along the entire length of the beam and disappearing into various large cavities, it seems disappointed and leaves the same way it arrived. I notice I'm sweating even more heavily than usual and have spilled a considerable amount of Chêne Antique wood preserver on the patchwork quilt my wife spent a month stitching together. I go downstairs for a large calva to steady my hand before clearing up and carrying on with the job. Later, I tell René of my encounter, and he says it was a hornet looking for a comfortable place to build a nest. I am lucky it didn't decide to settle in the mill, as it would take the combined resources and courage of the Saint-Sauveur Fire Brigade to get rid of the nest. I repeat my tale to Donella when she returns from a feeding trip, and I believe even she is glad we've not provided accommodation for this particular homeless creature and its family. August the 20th. The mayor calls to say that the pattern stone will be delivered next week, and asks if we're free to attend the laying ceremony so as to mark our involvement in the project. Regretfully, I turn his thoughtful invitation down and explain we're going to spend a few days seeing how life in Burgundy compares with Cotentin. I wish him well for the ceremony and remind him that he is judging our vegetable show next month. August the 27th. We set out for our visit to our friend Jean-Marie Guedinet's ancestral farm in a village not too far from Dijon. Though he was not born there, the property has been in John's family for generations, and now that his parents have passed on, he has bought the farm to save it being sold to strangers. Jean, who runs a chain of filled baguette shops in Hampshire, has phoned from England, told us where to find the keys, and said he'd be grateful if we would care to look the place over and give him the benefit of our experience in restoring interesting old French properties. August the 30th. Apart from the extreme heat and the complete absence of mud, we feel almost at home here. In some respects, though, Burgundy is not as French as we are used to. The condition of property and age of cars suggests that the locals generally enjoy a better standard of living, and Dijon is far, far grander and refined than we're used to with Cherbourg as our main town. There is even an Indian restaurant. In the afternoon, we visit Jean-Marie's birthplace, an imposing 4-story stone building perched next to the church in an elevated village with panoramic views for miles across the rolling countryside. We take photographs of the graves of J.M.'s parents before we leave. His mother and father are buried alongside each other in the family plot, with a lovely view overlooking the valley. The polished marble and freshly cut flower displays show that the plot is regularly given loving attention by other members of the Guedinet family. On the way back, I remark on how well the relatives care for grave sites in every cemetery, and we rather morbidly discuss our preferences for a final resting place. Donella says she would like to be buried at La Pousse in a biodegradable cardboard box so that her body can help enrich the land as quickly as possible. I say she is only thinking of giving her vegetable plot a further advantage over mine, and that I would be happy with a cremation, and for my ashes to be scattered by the pissoir outside the Bar Ghislaine. That way I would never lack company, and would be able to eavesdrop on so many interesting discussions. Exhausting the subject of death and burial, we stop at a bar outside Jean-Marie's village and take an ice-cold beer on the terrace. Not for the first time, I notice how easily the Burgundians understand my French. Either they are more used to foreigners, or too polite to give the blank stares and mystified shrugs I still receive on occasion in my home region. As we drive back to the farm, we see a dead hare in the road, and I suddenly realize that my friend Douglas the Emperor Dragonfly will probably not be around when we return to La Pousse. I must remember, my wife says comfortingly, that he found a mate before we left, so has served nature's purpose. He will have had, in dragonfly terms, a long and happy life, so should not be mourned. August the 31st. It is my wife's birthday. We are booked in for a special meal this evening at an auberge highly recommended by J.M. I call him to tell him of our adventures so far, and tactfully remind him that he's not sent a birthday card to Donella, as I had suggested. Totally out of character for such a normally polite man, he rather testily says that the French do not suffer from the English obsession for sending a greeting card on every occasion, from getting well soon to passing the driving test. Soon, he hazards, we will start posting a card to tell friends we've had a particularly satisfying piss. As we dress after a lazy day sunbathing in the garden, the phone rings. It's either Jean-Marie to apologize for his tetchiness or a problem at home. I have left the number with Madame Ghislaine in case any problems arise, but have asked that we not be bothered unless it's something important. I walk into the cool hallway and pick up the phone. It is René, and I realize that it is only the second occasion that we have spoken on the phone. The first time was when he called me in Portsmouth to complain about my closing our account with the local hardware store, and he shouted throughout our conversation as if we didn't have the benefits of a telephone link. This time he speaks so quietly I can hardly hear him. Before I can ask what the problem is, he tells me. John Chevalier is dead, and Solange is in hospital. Nene thought we would want to know.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chapter of René and Me, and that you join us again for the next one. See you soon.
René and Me. Written by George East and read by Eugene Fraser.